The Foxborough Planning Board can now be called to order.
Yep, you're at.
Rita coming in. We have a quorum with Carl Schaefer, Elfrida Alston, Ray Carney, and Mr. Bill Baker. Pleasure to see all of you tonight. This matter is adoption of our agenda for this evening. Does anyone care to propose any modifications or changes, or shall we vote to approve it as it is?
I move to approve as stated.
As stated.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is adopted unanimously. We come to our period of public comment, and Ginger has been taking names, yes?
Yeah, nobody for general.
Nobody for general public, okay. And for Zoom comments, we're not going to be able to take audio and video comments, but if someone wants to write in by email or in the comment block below, that will be noted. We come now to the matter of the minutes from our June 5th meeting, which was a fairly short meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look through the minutes, and do I hear a motion to approve? Or to modify? Bill moves to approve. Do I have a second? Thanks, Frida. Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye. Any opposed, nay? The minutes are unanimously approved. Our next item of business is a carryover from our last meeting, which we just need to vote on and either approve or deny. And if it's approved, we will send it along. Well, approved or denied, we'll send it along with 61 pages of comments and memoranda, which will go to the town board. So under old business, the Chatham Park North Village Small Area Plan Amendment. Do I hear a motion to approve or to deny?
No.
No motion? I mean, someone can move to table it again if that's the wish, but I think we've incorporated all of the.
Presentation, Molly?
No.
No, she's there for the next new business item. We're just here to vote on the.
And I will say, we did have one person, Liz Collington, sign up to speak, and so that's up to the board if they want.
Okay. We can take comment, I guess, after we vote. Is that the correct procedure?
It would be before.
Before, well, that's fine. All right, and Ms. Collington, would you like 3 minutes at the podium?
I may not need 3.
Well, thank you for your written submissions, which we've all read and appreciate.
I'll try not to cough this time.
Oh, go right ahead.
Yes. Responding to Carl's concerns and suggestions for a condition or recommendation regarding both stormwater and density, and specifically regarding curb and gutter. I have given the chairman some suggested wording that you could play with. And one version has explanatory notes as to why the wording seems a little weighty, and that is because alleys in the current small area plan, even alleys have curb and gutter. The wording about maybe some roads might have swales, it is so up in the air that it might apply nowhere. It's up to you as to how far back you might want to say no curb and gutter for anything, but I want to kind of throw it back onto you that this is a very doable recommendation, given the concerns that have been expressed at the meeting about impacts of the density, which I'm not sure you can do a whole lot about, but you can do something about the roads. And that is really all I would like to say, but thank you for allowing us to comment in the past. But I could stand here for like 15 seconds if the chairman would like to actually hand this out.
Well, I think you made an excellent written representation, and I appreciate it.
No, I mean, if you could hand out another.
I'm bringing,
Oh, yeah, that's in Molly's hands.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring them up.
That's in Molly's hands.
It went around the.
So we'll include all comments in the packet that goes over to the town board as well. So thank you.
You might want to add that to your vote
We shall.
today.
We shall. Gentlemen,
One question,
go ahead, Bill.
can we forward something to the town board with no vote?
I don't know if we can forward to the town board with no vote. Could we send a memorandum to the town board?
No, you do have to make a recommendation.
Okay,
That doesn't necessarily have to be this evening. And what I'm passing out right now, these are just the written comments that was submitted. So they.
excellent. Thank you.
So like your options, as always, are to recommend approval, deny.
Approval, denial, or table.
Table, yeah.
So we'll entertain a motion from you, Bill, if you care to make one. Approve, deny, or table? Ray?
I have a question.
Sure.
What I see as a concern, and you know, I'm basically new to this. I've been, 2 years now? Or more.
Yeah.
All these new ones that are applying are using Chatham Park as sort of their model.
Mm-hmm.
If we're building next to them, therefore it's done there, therefore we could be done.
Right.
And that's going to travel around the town, through the county, and I mean, where does enough become enough? How do we make that decision? Is that something I need to talk to the town lawyer about?
Probably, yeah, because I think what you're getting into is our UDP. I mean, that's, very, very much mirroring the
I mean, we had a UDO, then we had a small area plan, now
Right, exactly.
modification.
Yeah.
Small area plan.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the original
Mhm.
speeches that were given back in like 2014
Yeah.
and so on. I just wondered, I'll talk to Mr.
Yeah, well, it's gonna have to be consistent with the UDO, so. And that's gonna, in many ways, resemble what goes on in Chatham Park, because that's
The Chatham Park
Yeah.
predates the UDO.
Chatham Park, yeah, the small elements, Chatham Park elements,
With their master plan,
yeah.
you're looking for alignment there, not
Mhm.
necessarily with unified development. It depends on what you're talking about. So for instance, when we're doing development plans,
Uh-huh.
when staff is reviewing site plans and things like that, there are still elements of the UDO that apply,
Mhm.
road standards and things like that. But in this case, this is why it looks so different, is because it predates the unified development ordinance.
But I remember back, I think it was like 2013 or 14, they came in and gave us a speech in reference to the effects of Chatham Park on Pittsburgh. And that's when the big push went on for the UDO, and they had to get done because of all the businesses and such that were going to be coming in because of Chatham Park. And I think we're seeing that now. So even with the UDO, I still think we're seeing some sprawl type expansion.
Yeah.
This is what
Yeah.
the answer is.
And there's still obviously, like, when you have a big development coming, then Chatham Park is not gonna be the only game in town. There are gonna be other developers who want to come as well.
Yeah.
And those, when you apply now we have a unified development ordinance in place. And so those applicants will be subject to that unified development.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure that Mr. Messick or the planning director would be happy to go back into the archives of those minutes that you're referencing and.
I'd just like to get a little clearer set in my mind on these
Appreciate it.
votes when we're doing it.
Sure. Bill?
If I can make a comment. I know a lot of these things are maybe a little bit different than what they had originally,
Mhm.
but I have to say that I haven't seen Chatham Park do anything that was really negative
Mhm.
to Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Everything I've seen them do, I think has been pretty well first class. I don't necessarily agree with some of the density or things that they're doing,
Mhm.
but I don't see them building anything that's not an asset or something that looks good
Mhm.
that people would like to have as part of Pittsburgh. That's where I've got a little bit of a problem with. Every time they want to, turn a stop sign the other way, you got to go through all this documentation.
Yeah, well, we.
How many rules do you have to have?
Yeah, no, I take your point, Bill. We've sort of slid into a board discussion period before we actually took the vote, which is kind of backwards. So I'll entertain a motion to either approve and send this forward to the town board, deny or table.
I would like to move to approve Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Frida.
And I want to follow that with an explanation subsequent to last month's meeting. You all got the packet from Molly, which addressed the concerns of Charity and myself.
Mhm.
And they were, to me, they were perfectly and thoroughly addressed. Chatham Park has heard our feedback. The town commissioners have heard our feedback. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of this is out of our purview, really, about road design, curb and gutter, setbacks, some of the things that I was sort of, referencing last time. But probably the biggest one is the density that I was most concerned about. I was concerned or afraid that they could do density averaging, in which case we'd have some pretty intense density closest to the river. But Molly has confirmed that that's not the case. Those 4 tiers that we had in our plan that we looked at last time are just as they are stated. I forget them in my head. It was like 1 DU per acre and 300, 500, 700, 1,000 feet as they walk up the hill. While that is indeed more dense than an environmentalist would want, I think it satisfies the intent, to the best of our ability. So I'm just saying that's my justification. You might have been surprised. I moved to approve.
Mhm.
I wanted to elaborate on that.
And Carl, if you want them, they're up on the screen now. These are the ones in the.
Oh, thanks.
Mhm.
And if I may ask for the board, just for clarification,
Yes.
motion to approve, staff does have a recommended condition for revision of language about the parks. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, has everybody read the recommended revision vis-a-vis parks? Yes, Carl, yes. Rita, yes.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. We'll send along the comments and the amendments and 61 pages to the Town Board of Commissioners for the Chatham Park North Village Small Area Plan Development. Moving to new business. Mr. Chairman, pleasure to see you tonight. We've had quite a number of applicants for the positions that are available on the town board, planning board roster.
There's currently 2 positions open. There is one in-town alternate and one out-of-town alternate, which is the ETJ person.
Yes.
I believe if you look through your packet, and there is one additional one that's been handed out tonight,
Right.
it's 2 in town and 4 ETJ.
Mhm.
What's going on with this is that the town board of commissioners and the manager would like you all to make a recommendation based on the applications you have in front of you to send forward. One name for each is the preference. They don't want to sift through 6. They want to sift through 2. So 1 for each.
Right, understood. And what I'm not clear on, Mr. Director, is, since these are going to be paid positions and sworn members, do we need to go into a private session to discuss personnel matters?
Yes.
Well, fair enough. The other question I had was the applications that everyone filled out specified a meeting on the first Monday of every month. And I wonder if the applicants know that we have a revised meeting calendar. Have they been apprised of that?
I'm going to say possibly not.
Possibly not.
To throw this group back out for one more.
Yeah.
Gosh, it would be nice to know when it's actually going to happen and what time.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if we ought to do that in, in full disclosure and fairness to them. There's no reason that we can't punt on these positions.
Right.
And And all six look very well qualified to me. I mean, they all have unique skill sets and they're all quite impressive. And I'm sure each and every one of them would bring a significant contribution to us. So let's let them know about the meeting.
Problem.
That's right.
We're all equally qualified.
They're all very well qualified. So let's let the folks know that in fact, we can email to them our meeting schedule for the remainder of the year. And I mean, there may be some people that have other that this may cull the herd. I mean, if
It's also an opportunity for people who maybe missed the first time out, throw their hat in the ring.
so we'll keep the application door open.
Yes, I would like to do that if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or thank you, Mr. Director. Moving on now to the Chatham Park landscaping text amendments. Janie had distributed a couple of new pages to us with some redlined matters. And I see she has her laptop, so I'm going to hand the floor over to her for presentation.
Thank you. Go ahead and get it pulled up real quick. So there's not too much that's changed from what you all received in the memo. You do have just, I put together a short slideshow to show you the differences. So in the handouts that I gave you, if you go to the section 2 amendment, specifically in parentheses number 3. Those are, and highlighted, those are the changes that they are proposing for that section compared to what you received in the packet. Just some minor grammatical changes. And kind of some wordsmithing, it seems like. Do y'all have any questions?
No. I think it's clearer, obviously, in the revision.
Yeah. The second one, it's a large section. I didn't want it to get confusing by putting it on too many different files, but that's why I printed off the handouts to give you all. So they had referenced this paragraph 4, but now they have proposed to completely remove paragraph 4 and add in this buffer agreement clause, for lack of a better term. It does further clarify it. And I'm sure the applicant is here and they can discuss more about what their intentions were. But as far as what I have, that's pretty much it, because that's what's changed from when they had submitted. And that's up to you to discuss. If it's too much of a change, you can, motion to pass it on to the next meeting or another meeting, or you can make a decision on it or a recommendation on it.
Well, since the applicant's here, we'll invite them to elucidate us. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Patrick Bradshaw. I practice law at 128 Hillsborough Street in Pittsburgh. And I'm here tonight representing Chatham Park investors on these proposed amendments to the landscaping plan element, additional element. The substance of this request is to amend the landscaping plan additional element to provide that perimeter buffers will not be required between lots inside Chatham Park that have similar uses on them, between lots within Chatham Park or along the boundary of Chatham Park that are approved and developed as a single development plan, or between lots where the owners of those lots agree between themselves to vary the buffer requirements, provided that a buffer agreement between Chatham Park or any of its affiliates and a third party that is not an affiliate of Chatham Park would have to be approved in advance by the planning director. We've had a good exchange with the staff about these amendments. They made a couple of comments in our initial submission that we weren't prepared to respond to and address before the packet went out to you all. So that's why these few additional changes have come to you tonight. We continued to work after the packets went out and thought about it and came to what I think is a good solid resolution. The staff's concern was around limiting agreements to vary buffer requirements to properties, both of which were owned by Chatham Park investors, and to have the planning director approve all buffer agreements. So our concern about that was that we already know of some circumstances where it's going to be sensible to have buffer agreements But by the time the projects come to you all for consideration, they may not be both owned by Chatham Park investors. So the solution that we came up with through conversation with the staff is to allow buffer agreements between Chatham Park investors and its affiliates, but to require prior approval by the planning director where there's a buffer agreement between Chatham Park or its affiliates and a third party. So I think that addressed the concern that the staff was raising. This landscaping element is kind of a complicated document. We've been working on this proposal internally for a number of months. And staff engaged with it seriously and made some legitimate comments. We've tried to respond to those thoughtfully. And I think we came to a solution that both groups think is reasonable and appropriate in circumstances. So we'd appreciate if you all would consider recommending approval to the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, Counselor. Any questions from the board members?
Will those third-party buffer agreements be recorded on the plat or on the property's deed?
The agreement itself would be put into recordable form before any building permit is issued. And that's in that paragraph, new buffer agreement section that replaced paragraph 4. Much of that language was not new. That provision for recording was already in the element. So it would be recorded, the agreement itself would be recorded. And then as subsequent properties that are subject to the agreement are developed, a memorandum that refers back to the original agreement would also have to be recorded. So the agreement would end up in the chain of title recorded in the Register of Deeds office for all of the.
For all properties?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? We'll entertain a motion to either approve or deny or to table. Board members, what's your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve.
Thank you, Frida. Second, Bill Baker, thank you very much. And we're going to vote then on the approval of PB 23-218. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. PB 23-218 passes. Thanks very much. Moving on to our next item, which is an application for a zoning change to build a storage facility. It's PB 23-214 HHC. And our planning director is to present.
Good evening. Did want to draw your attention to staff analysis and the report that's in front of you, because that's actually what I'm going to speak to you all about. I wanted to point out to you that I came into this particular process fairly late. If you look on the background itself, there's a legislative request by High House Capital LLC on behalf of property owners for a rezoning from RA2 residential 2-acre lots and RA5 residential agricultural for 5-acre lots to M1CZ light industrial conditional zoning from any storage, retail sale, service establishment personal, on parcel 6724 being approximately 5.32 acres located at 2865 US 1551 North. Want to draw your attention to the fact that you're probably going to hear a fair amount of commentary once I do sit down, because I certainly did speak to the developers about this. I think what you need to think about tonight is a couple of things. I think you need to think about the UDO and how the UDO classifies business uses or commercial uses or light industrial uses or industrial uses. I also think you need to think about the newly adopted land use plan, because I think those are two sets of details that I think are really germane to this discussion. One thing I want to put to rest right now is that this particular use is a use by right in our M1 light industrial and M2 heavy industrial. So regardless of what else you may hear this evening, I'm certainly going to tell you that to my mind, and certainly using the dictionary that is the UDO, I will certainly tell you that this use is in a manufacturing industrial kind of thing. It's not a business. Unless we go buy a muffler or something. Okay, under the UDO, conditional rezoning processes, the planning board is required to review, submit a proposal with conditions of the rezoning that have been incorporated into the application. You're supposed to address proposed zoning map amendment that's consistent with the land use plan or any other applicable adopted plan. Now, I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. The picture that's at the top of your page here, this purple and green thing, is showing the current zoning. These are the two residential agricultural classifications. And while you will be directed in just a minute to look at Mosaic and to look at the new Lowe's Foods and to look at a lot of commercial activity going on near this, what you're not looking at is a lot of industrial activity going on near it. That's critically important. I did want to draw your attention to something else, which is the crosshatch picture below it, which is right here. It'd be so great if I'd done a PowerPoint, but I'm feeling up to move tonight. I want to point out this is between Charter Boulevard and Oldham Place. The property is designated as a traditional neighborhood infill on the land use plan. I want y'all to get it straight because zoning is residential. The land use plan says that if you want to change that residential, you need to be thinking about traditional neighborhood infill. And this crosshatch green area is a natural resource conservation target area in the land use plan, which you all just adopted. Now, what happens there is it sure is nice to hang on to trees. It's nice to keep a little bit of the ag and a little bit of the natural sort of area there. So when you go to develop something like that for commercial purposes or manufacturing purposes or industrial purposes or whatever else you want it to be, I think you need to realize that a few trees are coming down in the process. In the application, there are multiple references to sections, and I do want to say for the record, because they're going to point out to you that they intend to annex into town, which is great if that does happen to this property, because at that point it will be eligible for us to receive a small amount of money in property taxes. At this moment, things that are in the ETJ, we do not receive property tax. The county does. That's the people in the next room. We don't. That's the people in this room. Okay. Now, there are multiple references to sections of the recently adopted land use plan, and they contend these pieces support their request. Primary goal is to grow strategically by investing in infrastructure facilities or programs that improve quality of life for all residents. The applicant states this project will generate construction jobs during the development and additional employment once completed. The estimated project cost is $10 million, which sounds like, if you look in your own checking account, an amazing amount of money. I'd like to turn your attention across the street to Mosaic. $10 million, I believe, would be described as a drop in the bucket. So I want us to get our wallet straight in our minds. Also, I want you to understand that, their contention is that they're going to contribute a significant use to the town's resources without requiring sewer, which is one of the more exciting things. Until you take into consideration, the last time I was in this room, I was here very recently, about a week ago. We were having a talk about a merger, in which case we will suddenly have a lot more capacity for sewer. So conversations about, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if we could think of something to do without sewer become less important moving forward after next month's vote on the merger between us and the town of Sanford. Okay. Development is also supposed to support nearby commercial, office, residential uses while improving the quality of life for residents, needing additional storage space. And then there's a little bit of information here where the applicant in their application references the section of the land use plan LUH 6.2. They cite the development of Mosaic at Chatham Park with a variety of mixed uses in proximity to this as an example of how their project is compatible. I want you to think about Mosaic as a commercial use. This is an industrial use, okay? Not the same thing. Now, staff opinion, and this is the part where I'm going to kind of do the mic drop moment in just a moment. That's what I have to say about it. Site is currently zoned for primarily low to very low density residential housing in an agrarian setting. That's why it's got an ag category. The applicant wishes to develop an environmentally challenging segment of the property, about 3 acres, 3 to 5, in a commercial manner that somewhat mimics or complements the development across US Highway 5501. Geographical location of the property across the street from PDD from Mosaic. PDD is a developer's agreement. It is a private development plan. It is very much self-contained. If it was lifted off the face of the earth and dropped somewhere else, it would still be what it is. So they're not depending on this particular use. Just want to make sure you know that it is in fact across the street. Also, north of the MUPD for the shopping center where Lowe's Food just opened. And a considerably larger C2 CZ that contains a metal working shop and something else that's up there. Doesn't counter any potential argument that in my estimation, this is a spot zoning request that isn't justified by the plans laid out in the land use plan. Spot zoning is when you take a very, very small portion of land and the land around it is uniformly zoned in a particular way. And then you pluck it out of that and say, this little piece needs to be developed more like its neighbors here and here and less like its real neighbors, which are back here in the county where this currently is. Okay, restricting the conditional zoning to allowing one use, which is climate controlled mini storage with a couple of others, limiting the list of other potential commercial uses, reducing the parking spaces of proposed use with the promise of adding more spaces if other retail is chosen as a later use. None of this addresses the issue of spot zoning. Spot zoning in North Carolina isn't like a terrible crime. It's just that your ability to be sued or to create a standing to sue where other people who disagree with what was done sort of goes out the window when you name a public purpose. Mini storage is not a public purpose. Just want to be real clear. It's a private business. So mini storage facilities are not a public good. They are private and they are for-profit enterprises. And I sincerely hope if they open this one, they make a profit. I would like to see everyone do that. Recommending approval of this proposal means permanently changing the just adopted land use map for the sake of adding industrial uses near a shopping center and near the high school. It ignores two key components of the plan. The area is designated for traditional neighborhood infill, and overlay cross-striping identifies it as a natural resource conservation area. This is not a conservation project. This is a cut down the woods project and build something. Unless the site annexes into the corporate limits of the town, none of the property tax contributed listed will end up in the town's coffers. ETJ properties pay county tax. Temporary jobs added during the rapid construction will vanish quickly. And I do have to say, if we were looking for other construction workers working in the area, one need only look across the street or down the street and see quite a bit of development. I was talking today to someone who is trying to develop 2 new properties directly behind Lowe's Food. So we needn't worry that there will be no construction. It's just that this particular piece I feel is a bad match. Typically, many storage facilities have less than 5 full-time equivalent positions to permanent payroll. Staff recommends requesting the town board of commissioners deny this rezoning request. Included in your packet is their parcel conditions that they provided as part of theirs. And there's a copy of their application. And this point, I'm going to yield before, unless you have questions for me. I can come back later.
Questions for the director on this?
I have one question.
Bill.
If this is denied,
Yes, sir.
does that mean that that land has to be residential? It can't be anything else?
Yeah. What happens if this is denied is a couple of things. If you all vote to recommend denial of this, it is still going to the Board of Commissioners and they are perfectly happy to have their own hearing. Then they get to decide, do they want to change the land use map to use it this way? And do they want this piece zoned this particular way? If they don't, it stays whatever it is currently zoned until some other developer comes in here with a similar request or some other request to develop it. The land is not required to stay the woods forever. No, sir.
In other words, this could go on and on and on and on and on, and nothing ever happened.
Or something could happen that's amazing in 5 minutes, but this particular project is not making or breaking this down.
It's safe to say that it could come in under a special use permit or a commercial use that might be applicable, but the manufacturing use not. Is that a safe statement to kind of?
If I were trying to fill this in myself and I were the developer, I would look for something that was more neighborhood infill.
Does that make sense, Bill? Something that's more compatible?
Yes and no, but I get back to the old thing about rights. People have property, they ought to have a right to do something with it
Are these
and not be told they can't do.
Are they the current owners? It's under option. Are they the current owner?
They haven't bought it. They're not the current owners.
However,
Sure, the man can sell it, ain't gonna-
Sell it.
He ain't gonna have a sale if they don't do it.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, so that we're,
Yeah, no, I take your point. Mr. Director, looking down the road, let's say that this project is approved and the mini storage is constructed. And 10 years from now, the demand for mini storage just falls off the face of the earth. And the developer chooses to sell the property because we've zoned it industrial means somebody could bring a cement plant, right?
Well, they have narrowed down the list and I will certainly let them. Their proposed uses are limited to mini storage, retail sales, service establishment, personal. So there's an effort to whittle it down. They want a maximum of 15 parking spaces provided for mini storage use if it's developed for retail service or other service establishment, personal use, and the future number of parking spaces will conform to UDO standards, which means they would have to build more parking. So, and of course, the perimeter buffers and street yard buffers are supposed to conform to the current version. So nothing could be built there. A number of things could be built there. Nothing about this conversation decides anything other than can these folks go forward with an A on their report card and a little smiley face on the paper? Are they going with, no,
Right.
like our land use plan we adopted 2 months ago, and I don't see this as a compatible use.
Understood.
So all we're looking for is an advisory opinion, but
this is the land right in front of the high school.
it's beside the sign.
Yeah, it's beside the high school sign. It's it's the woods on the north side.
West of
You
15.
got the
That's
grocery
the land right
store
in front of the high school, correct?
It's not in front per se.
right in front of the high school
Past.
back.
Oh, it's on the other road, the other end of the side.
It's on 15501, right?
Yes,
Look at the second page there, Bill.
Maybe I missed something somewhere.
if you're standing looking at the Northwood sign, Bill,
I don't know where the Northwood sign is. You gotta help me.
The Northwood sign is on the old, only entrance. Now we have a second entrance.
It's beyond the second entrance.
It's beyond the second entrance.
Okay.
By 100 feet.
right?
And
I
on,
was thinking that the land in front of the high school,
yeah,
wasn't that some kind of a conservation thing or something?
Yeah, well, that whole area is conservation thing.
Okay.
Record pointed out.
I was confused the location.
Yeah.
what we got in the packet was very thorough. The
Yeah.
explanation was extremely thorough again. I move to deny.
Fair second.
Second that.
Mr. Carney seconds. Can we take a vote on the motion to deny? Any,
That's for more discussion.
you want more discussion?
I don't want it, but you need.
Yeah. Anybody care to discuss further? Board members, clear all? All in favor of denying this application and,
Take the vote. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, Molly.
The applicant has a right to.
oh, all right, please.
I'm going to yield the floor this time.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Chair Ron, Vice Chair Schaefer, members of the Pittsburgh Planning Board. I am Neil Ghosh with the Morningstar Law Group at 700 West Main Street in Durham. And I'm representing the applicant for this item. We do find ourselves in a precarious situation, given the motion on the table and the second. But, we appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I also appreciate the presentation by Director Kuhn Tingle, and we will respectfully take a different. My client had been working on this rezoning for some time prior to Director Cahoon Tingle becoming the director. In fact, we were working with a different interim planning director. The first draft of the staff report, which was provided to my clients on June 29th, was quite different than the staff report you all received. It was overall supportive and, we point out, it was very similar to the analysis for the property at 45 White's Way, which was rezoned about a year ago. And that comparison is apt because there are a lot of similarities between the two. I can appreciate that with personnel changes, different feedback is bound to result, but the wide divergence between the two staff reports is quite difficult to explain. So as compared to the 45 White's Way rezoning, which was approved about a year ago, both this parcel and that parcel are shown on the current future land use map as traditional neighborhood infill. And both rezoning requests were for a mini storage operation. There, I believe that parcel was rezoned from RA to M1 conditional, which is what we are requesting. And we recognize the M1 zoning can be intense. And that's exactly why we've offered to limit the uses. The only uses that would be allowed under our current zoning are essentially retail, so a store, or services, so you can get your nails done or get your hair cut, and self-storage. Nothing about that sounds very industrial to me. From an intensity standpoint, modern mini storage is one of the least intense uses that there is. It pays taxes, but has very low demand for water and sewer in the first place. You might have one toilet, two toilets on the whole development for mini storage. It creates no additional need for school children. Traffic at these sites is minimal. There's no need for police, fire, EMS, again, all that is minimal. And in many ways, this type of use is the perfect way to utilize an underdeveloped property until it can be developed for something more intensive, which is exactly what we have planned here. The site does not have convenient sewer access at the moment, which prevents any development at scale on the site. But the proposed use can easily be converted later into more public-facing retail type use when the opportunity arises. We can't guarantee that that's what will happen, but we certainly have set up the zoning with that in mind. It could be developed first for mini storage, which is again a very low intensity use. And when water and sewer make its way over to this property and are available, those uses could easily be converted into retail service type use, which is allowed under the zoning and which is what you see a lot of across the street. The other thing is that, mini storage has come a long way. Certainly, we all have seen the more industrial type mini storage facilities with endless rows of single story barracks type buildings with roll up doors. But that's not what is proposed here. These days, modern storage buildings, and particularly one that my clients intend to build, much more akin to an office use with multi-story attractive buildings. I think, but for the signage, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was self-storage just at first glance while you were driving by. If you saw this is going to be an aesthetically pleasing office type building. And in fact, we do have renderings that we've brought, which we can show you. Keep in mind, we want to preserve our ability to easily convert this site, which has frontage on 15,001, into a retail type use in the future if that opportunity presents itself. In the meantime, to make productive use of the property, mini storage makes a lot of sense for the reasons stated earlier. I will take exception to the characterization of this request as illegal spot zoning. As I have alluded, there already is a precedent for exactly this type of request. One which was inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, but was reasonable nonetheless. And that's the one at 45 White today that was approved year ago. At its January 3rd, 2022 meeting, this board unanimously recommended approval for that rezoning, which is essentially the same request we're making tonight. I've not seen any reason why this request should be treated differently. And in fact, until about last week, we were not being treated differently. We had the staff report that was previously penned, looked very similar and was in general supportive of the case. We can't reinvent the wheel, but we are committed to making this work on this site. And given the motion you all made in the second, and the fact that that motion is pending, I don't know how that vote's going to go, although I have a suspicion. Like I said, my clients are committed to this site, and I would respectfully ask for some more discussion on this, and we can get to an understanding of how to get to yes, whether it's tonight or at the elected official stage, because this is a site which can be used. It's not going to be used for residential. And if you approve this rezoning, or if this rezoning gets approved, it also will not be used for industrial. Certainly that zoning is an industrial type zoning. We've eliminated all of those industrial uses. We're telling you right now what we want to use it for. Those are the renderings of the building. Like the screen right here. Those are the renderings of the building. That looks like any other office building in my mind. And there will be signage on it. I don't want to suggest otherwise, so people will drive by it and they will know it's self-storage. But other than the signage, you wouldn't know that. I mean, that's just an office building. So we would appreciate some feedback on this, because my client is committed to making work. And just to answer the question, they don't own the property right now. They do have it under contract. And if this rezoning, whether tonight or at the elected official, at the next public hearing doesn't get approved, that property owner is still stuck with this property and waiting for someone to figure out a way to use it. So that kind of feedback would be useful for the property owner, if not my client. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Counselor.
All right.
Director.
Of course, I've come to rebut. Let me throw in a couple of things. Yes, I did take the role after this project was in place. I was very aware of a different proposed report being turned out. I went to the trouble of staying 1 hour and 27 minutes beyond the end of my workday and met with the two gentlemen behind me, not the attorney, but the engineer involved in this project and one or two others. And we had a very lengthy and protracted discussion of every single detail of this particular case. What I brought to their mind was what I had discussed with my own staff just days earlier, which is we have a brand new land use plan. We have a land use plan with a map that was approved by this board and by the other board, this advisory board, and by the elected board. And when I am giving presentations, as I am the director, and this is my project to present, I will be sticking to the text of the newly adopted, because if the Board of Commissioners were to approve this change, it is a permanent change to the just adopted. And I did describe it, I believe, when I was speaking to the gentleman behind me, as shooting holes in a brand new map. So I'm going to certainly say that I did make my concerns very clear. As far as the industrial description of it, the UDO classifies it as such based on the standard industrial code. If this town chooses to declassify mini storage and wants to make it no different than a Toys R Us or an Advanced Auto Parts, then they need to go back, strip out that classification, go into the uses in the UDO and remove it from the industrial category. It wasn't that I came here from a different place with a different point of view and decided to try to baptize you all in the beliefs that I've picked up over 20 years. What I did was I took a look at your ordinance, which I spent a solid week reading over and retooling this report, and came to a couple of conclusions. The first conclusion is that nowhere in the UDO is this use described as anything other than an M1 or an M2 use, whether you do it conditionally or not. That still makes it light or heavy industrial. Whether we like that or not, that is a whole discussion for a completely different day. The other issue is I wasn't here for the adoption but I am here for the implementing the land use plan. I did not come in and get handed a land use plan that was 2 months old and get told, hey, about this map, forget it. About these words, forget it. About this report, forget it. And also on my desk during that week was a nomination for this site and this plan for conservation advances on behalf of the town to be given at the North Carolina Planning Association. Now, at the very least, if the town adopts this ordinance change, we need to withdraw that application, because clearly conservation of the conservation area is not really part of the mix unless we want to take it out to a further part in the ETJ. And that could be a matter to discuss at the next iteration, the land use plan. But as we are sitting here today, the land use plan says this is not a good use of this land, and the UDO says this is industrial. So I'm saying, putting those two facts together in my mind, yes, I did dismiss my own staff's report, and I was so concerned about it. I spoke to the town manager about it, and then I turned around and called the engineer and the two gentlemen behind me, Mr. Ho and I'm going to draw. Thank you so much. I feel better now. Stand up for a second if you don't mind. These are the two gentlemen I talked to on the phone, among others. And I did point out that not really my favorite way to meet people, but the point was my experience with land use plans, the brand new ones. If this was a 19-year-old land use plan and you all planned on something that never happened, okay. But the land use plan under the laws of North Carolina has become the guiding document for our zoning program. So I either need to buy the theory that we are throwing out a 2-month-old land use plan in favor of a project that predated my time here, or I need you to look for it carefully and see how this aligns with the plan you adopted. This is not an out shouting match for these folks.
Sure.
I professionally respect every single person that's, I was going to say standing, they're now sitting back. But it's nothing about that. It's basically about the fact that I had just given my staff quite the speech about the need to stick to the plan in front of you and interpret the plan. In much the same way that I feel that a minister going into church needs to be interpreting the Bible and delivering something that both you're using for guidance. So I'm just feeling like you need to look at your own plan. And that is the end of what I have.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you.
I got one more comment, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Carl.
The gentleman that spoke before, the director referenced several times, 3, maybe 4, about the parallels between this and I think he called it the White property, which is Poultry Villa,
Right.
which we did about a year and a half ago, which has had for 30 years a business site on it.
Mhm.
So the use was existing. And we just went with it because all the stuff was there. So there's absolutely no parallel between what's proposed tonight and what we did a year and a half ago, as was stated.
Well said. Thank you, Carl.
I'm sure that's the same project. Poultry,
On 15501,
45 White's Way.
Yeah, White's.
Talking about on 60.
that's
Yeah, I'm not.
on 64.
64. Yeah, like White is a little bit down past the credit union.
It's to Chatham.
Is this the one that adjoined, was wedged in between Chatham Park?
Yeah, I believe it's the one.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
very different.
it's different.
That's different, yeah.
Is that where Choate is building that industrial mixed use?
Just did that one last month.
No,
No, this is a couple years ago.
And
Sometime back.
Yeah.
I think it was 64 and where Chatham Parkway is going to be coming across when they cross 64.
I'm not,
Yes.
And it's,
I apologize for the
Yeah.
confusion.
yeah,
but it's just like down the road from
Yeah.
It's
Town
on the
hall.
screen.
It's that one where the mouse. is.
Right.
I agree. That was totally,
it's different than what they're asking for.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember now.
And just I'll
Counselor.
just say, I don't disagree with much of what the planning director has said. We recognize that the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan of land use map. I get that. This wouldn't be the first rezoning that had ever been requested that was inconsistent. And I also understand exactly why planning director Tingle has highlighted that's inconsistent. We don't disagree with that. I understand exactly why he's saying that the use is considered industrial in the UDO. Don't disagree with that. And I also recognize that the planning director and staff of town are bound by those documents. And those words do have meaning. However, I'm just presenting you with exactly what my client wants to do. I think it's really difficult to call that use an industrial use in colloquial terms under the UDO. It certainly is. That's exactly why we requested an industrial zoning district. So again, don't know which way you're going to vote regardless, would appreciate the feedback and discussion so we can understand what can be done on this property, what would be acceptable, and what is a reasonable use here, and understand my clients don't own the property, someone else does. Feedback could be going to them
Sure.
ultimately, and it is news to me that the town is looking at this site for some sort of conservation component, and I just wonder if the owner of the property is aware of that. I certainly was.
Right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Counselor. And of course, once this goes to the town board, they have the power to overrule us and can designate this to be whatever you may wish, and that's their prerogative. But we come now to a vote if there's no further discussion, and all in favor of denying this application as it's not consistent with our land use plan and UDO. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, it's denied.
Thank you.
Moving on, we've got 2 further items of new business tonight. And who's presenting PB 23-276? Janie?
I'll just give you a brief overview of what the proposed changes are, and applicants are here. What they submitted was simply to strike the use of tattoo parlor, or tattoo studio establishment and or body piercing from the downtown overlay, because currently that's not allowed. So staff took this and with discussions, wrote some additional language to make it more clear and add some standards on establishments. So currently, the tattoo establishments are just listed in the personal services. So we had to add in the use of retail sales and personal services. And they match the same as the service establishment personal permitted by use, permitted by right zoning designations. And then the specific standards that we include, specifically within the downtown overlay, the use will be prohibited on the first or the ground floor and within basement or below grade level. So it can only be on the second story or higher. For parking, so there's no downtown parking requirements. So this is outside of the downtown overlay, just generally if there's a tattoo establishment proposed and it needs to be rezoned. For parking, it shall meet the same standards as the service establishment, and then also that there should be no more than 2 within 300 feet of each other. To remain consistent, we removed the parlors from the personal service establishment since it's proposed to be its own use. And then also pulled a definition from APA dictionary, the American Planning Association dictionary, for how to describe what it is. Those are the changes that we have prepared. Did you all have any questions? The applicant is also here if you have any questions, and they provided some detail about why they believe that this should be proposed as it is.
Just to be clear, Janie, the changes you just elaborated on would be what would be needed to allow this use.
It's not necessarily needed, but just taking it out of the downtown overlay, we just wanted it to be a little bit more specific because we had gotten some input that, you know, people may be nervous about it some, so we wanted to add in some standards in there to just give some more surety.
Got it.
Any other questions from the board? Would we like to hear from the applicants?
Yes.
Please.
Do you want me to leave this out? Because I have your stuff. Lovely. Okay. You just.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Parton. I'm one of the applicants. My partner cannot be here today because he had an appointment. He had to have rescheduled for today, so he got work. I believe that we, as an art studio, basically above all, belong in the downtown area because it is an art area. That's what you guys want there. I think that nothing about a tattoo studio kind of matches what was originally put in this downtown overlay section. I think it kind of stands out above the others, minus maybe the massage parlor, which I understand is why there. I believe that when it was put in there at the time, it had a lot of reason for it. It made sense, but with all the new development that's going on around the town, I believe that it would be remiss to not add it into your guys' area. What you're going to do if you don't change this is you're going to lose a lot of business for the newer generations coming into your outside areas that are being built now. And I think that with the kind of studio that we're trying to put in there and what tattooing is now, it definitely fits, like I said, the standards of the town in general. I think we acknowledge historic character because it's one of the oldest styles of, actually one of the oldest employment in history. It's a bicycle friendly situation. I'm sorry. It's a bicycle friendly business because you don't have to add any extra traffic. You guys already have plenty of traffic coming through the town that we can pull from we want to reflect the heritage of the community. We want to keep the old school look with wooden signs, not a lot of LED stuff. The building itself is a beautiful wooden historic building, and we don't have to add very much to that building to make it work for what our use is. Being upstairs, I don't think we would be any kind of an eyesore to the town, nor would we stand out too far for anyone who wasn't really looking for that. You guys have with you my whole essay basically on why it belongs here. But basically, times have changed. Tattooing is not what it used to be. It's not a bunch of bikers and it's not a bunch of criminals doing it. These are people, doctors, lawyers, politicians, everyone has tattoos now. And it's definitely something that I think would benefit more than it would harm it. You have all my information that I've had in front of you. So really all I have is if you have any questions for me, I would love to answer anything you might have that may be a concern of yours.
You and your partner currently operate a tattoo shop.
I own a tattoo shop. He's coming from a shop in Greensboro.
I see.
It's now called Golden Falcon Tattoo and Piercing, and it was called Gypsy Hill Tattoo and Piercing. We changed the name due to the not so PC nature of the word that we have now learned.
Right.
And as soon as I found out that it was not an appropriate term, and honestly, I'm dating somebody from an area that is a victim of that term. So it was nice that I found out that. But I have photos of the shop that I have now, and I have business owners in town that would vouch for me. I'm a productive member of the community. We do charity work. It's not the same as it used to be. But I also have photos of the studios that I put together to show you that we're not just some red wall, crazy biker shop. It's definitely a more classy industry now.
Do you tend to operate your business mainly in the evening hours? Is it this kind of a 6 p.m. and after for folks after work?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're a daytime studio.
I see.
The studio closes at 8 p.m. at the latest.
I see.
We don't run late hours. We like the daytime crowd. We're not catering to drunk people. We're not catering to any of that crowd. We want it to be a family-friendly environment where anyone can go in. There's always an art gallery with custom works from people, not only in the studio, but around town. We like to make it a collaborative effort.
Very good. Good answer. Thank you. What's your pleasure, board members? Further questions or discussion?
I'll have to admit, I'm very neutral on this. But I've talked to a number of people over the last week or whenever we got our packet. And y'all know I support business, but I also am very cognizant of what I hear from longtime residents. And, especially and this is going to come up on the next topic when we have something new coming into an old neighborhood, which is not parallel with. And what I'm hearing from longtime residents is a negative view towards this in the downtown district. So I'm just sharing stories, feedback with you guys from what I've heard.
Okay. Right.
I can also assure you that we have spoken to the business owners in the town around where we're trying to go to, and we can put a petition together in favor of us. So there's always going to be, with any new business comes in, there's going to be some kind of a negative from some part of the party, but we'd like to work with those people and show them that we're not what they think we are.
Are we talking about the space that's currently occupied by the wine shop?
Next to the wine shop, the antique wooden tool space.
Right, on the second floor of.
Ed shop, but it's a brick building now.
Yeah, brick building.
That's what confused me. I was starting to wonder where we're going to be.
Go ahead, Bill.
I've always wondered that. How do they operate that place with no elevator? It's not handicap access.
Yeah.
We, as our kind of studio, we don't have to be handicap accessible. Most people who get tattoos don't. And
I wondered.
we also, it's not a requirement for our kind of business to be handicap accessible.
Okay.
I guess.
I thought of it 2 or 3 times. I saw the wine shop very same.
Right.
How you get up there if you're handicapped?
Yeah. Yeah, very good point.
Never thought about that. I started using a cane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of people too, and a lot of people that I've talked to have tattoos, and they're not crazy looking, they're not, I mean, people like what they like. And actually, both my girls, they have had tattoos since they were 18, and they are very upstanding people that work in the community. So it's just, I don't have any, but
No, I
I
appreciate.
mean, I haven't heard any negative comments
Yeah,
about it, because it's like she said, it's not like it used to be.
right.
It used,
Well,
they have a bad name, but it's not.
And our minimum is $150,
Mhm.
averaging $200 an hour. Our average incomes are anywhere from 80,000 to 200,000 a year. We do not cater to people who can't afford it. They're mostly people who are doctors and lawyers. Like I said, I have a lot of different people on my client list, and
Sure.
programmers. You guys have a lot of new development coming in that's going to be looking for this, and going outside of town. People are going to start to leave town to go to things like that. And we're trying to stimulate business in your town.
This is
Right.
kind of like the opposite of spot zoning.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this dovetails a little bit on the storage unit we just were in. I sat through a lot of meetings in the town when they were setting up, and we were talking about all the expansion and people
Mhm.
coming into town because of the growth.
Mhm.
And a lot of people spend a lot of time and effort on the overlay
Mhm.
and put certain regulations in. And either I'm going to vote no,
Mhm.
or I'm going to vote to table it
Mhm.
until I can talk to people that wrote that overlay.
Mhm.
I need more information. You know me, I'm history.
Sure. No, I
I
appreciate
lived,
that.
breathed, and died Pittsboro history.
Mhm.
I'd also like to point out one more thing about tattooing is tattooing is not only art now. Tattooing is also has medical uses. Tattooing has become a cosmetic and medical field, anywhere from permanent eyeliner, brows, and lip shades to covering scars and vitiligo pigmentation. I myself have done reconstruction on breast surgery to correct issues that women have with themselves. It's a way to take back something that you were given that you want to make your own. I have a foundation where I cover tattoos from abuse victims, from sexual traffic victims to sexual abuse victims, where their partners or their keepers make them have branded tattoos or names put on them. And I do those for free for a foundation of mine that I'm working on. And if we do table it, I can bring one of my clients to vouch for me if that's.
It's not what you do. I'm not against what you do. I'm against, that overlay district is 1/4 of a mile, I believe, from the center of the courthouse. That's historical. That was founded in 1798. And I fight to keep it historical. And there's changes coming all the time. If you chose to go outside of that district, I probably would vote yes. Because you are a business person, you look like a nice person, you're presenting a good presentation. But Pittsboro's historical district,
Yeah, but there is,
and that's what I'm going to fight as long as I'm on this board to protect, is the history of Pittsboro and promote the history of Pittsboro.
And I understand that, your UDO for the downtown overlay specifically mentions it as an art district, and it says
specifically that it's looking for a wide variety of mixed uses. But
so
art, excuse me, I'm sorry, but art is in the eye of the beholder. And I'm not going to give you my personal opinions on that area, but I would prefer to see you start a business outside of town. There's other ones like down by Lowe's. I think they still have some of them shops that are open. I know they built some new ones up.
4,000 a month to 6,000 a month is.
No, but you're making 70, 80, $200,000 a year.
also hasn't the overlay district been overturned 3 times?
I don't know. That's what I said.
Huh?
I don't know.
Well, I think I hear Ray suggesting that he might want to move for tabling this so that further research can be
I
done.
would think that would be the fairest thing to do for the young lady and for
All right,
me.
is that your motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Carl seconds?
And I'd like to add, I hate to put you through the hoops,
Yeah.
but you suggested bringing a list of downtown other, business owners and managers and stuff that support this. I applaud it. I really do. But I think that's a safe way for us to hang right now. If you would engage that.
I have no problems working with you guys. I'm not trying to fight the government.
Yeah.
I think that what we're trying to build is part of what you're looking for. And I am completely okay with working with you guys to try.
We're not the government. We're just the citizens. The government are the people to whom we send the paperwork. And I would say you've made an excellent presentation and it's very persuasive. And as the chair, I don't have a vote, but I will say that for 6 years, I lived in Camden Town, North London, which is probably the worldwide center of tattooing and body modifications. And I think it's very artistic, a lot of it. So I'll leave it to you all to vote. We'll call for a vote. We've got a motion and a second to table. All in favor of tabling, aye?
Aye.
Yeah.
Need to state a specific date. You want to table it to, if you want to do it
To our next meeting
before the, okay.
or before the next meeting.
Will you have time to solicit the downtown people you referred to within the next 3 weeks?
I'm supposed to be out of town in August. I'm going to Alaska for 3 months.
Wow.
September would be.
September meeting. All right, we'll do that.
Okay, for the September meeting.
All right, we'll table to the September meeting then. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Unanimously table to the September meeting.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. All right, the final item of new business. Bill?
And moving right along.
Moving right along, yeah, to the final item of new business for tonight, which is Reeves Farm, and this is a conditional rezoning matter, and it looks like Janie, you're up to present.
Sure am. All right, so it's a pretty lengthy packet. Got a lot of discussion tonight, so if you all want to take it in, we'll just see how it goes. You have all of the information, just one of the suggestions that staff has that we did not see, and we have talked to the applicant about this, and it would be something for you all to discuss and possibly, think about and bring it back if you need to think about it more, is proposing some type of phasing component to it. Because what we have seen just professionally, not only here, but in other places, is with mixed use developments, if there's not a specific phasing with it, you can have all of your residential develop and then the commercial just kind of trickles in or it doesn't trickle in. And so staff is suggesting some type of equation to say, for example, just arbitrarily, before they can get their 426 CO for a residence, they would have to have at least 300,000 square feet of commercial, something like that to kind of go off of. So I'm going to go ahead and let the applicant speak because I know they have a presentation. Do you want me to just pull yours up and you can?
Yes.
Okay. Let me find it first.
Stage first and then you get it.
Don't let it work. Or maybe the nice mouse.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board. My name is Edward Holmes. I live in Chapelville at 156 Pinehurst Drive, but I was born in Pittsburgh about 63 years ago. And at age 6 months old, Pittsburgh had a problem that they have now. Not enough houses to meet the people in demand. And so we were living in a little small 2-bedroom house
My parents were expanding the family, and so we found a place to rent. And it's about 1,000 feet from here on the Reeves farm. And so I grew up looking at this property that we're getting ready to talk about. Spent a lot of my time playing and chasing cows and doing a lot of things we really weren't supposed to be doing in the barn, getting kicked out. When I was a kid in junior high school, I worked for the Reeves family. And it lasted 3 days helping pick up rocks in the field so the silage cutter wouldn't cut it. And then later on in high school, I did other projects for Mr. Reeves, picking up hay and things like that. We got to know the family and know the property really well. So it's really ironic that I'm standing here before you today asking for what we're going to ask for. 2 years ago, I had a phone call from the three Reeves sisters that had inherited this property. They're in their late 60s, early 70s, and they'd inherited this 500-acre property from their father and wanted to know what to do with it. Their father had had a land use plan years ago and always assumed that it would be developed. And Reeves sisters knew that my family had been involved in land development and wanted me to go to lunch with them. And so we went and had lunch. They said, Edward, we want to sell the family farm. It's the hardest decision we'll ever make, and we only have one chance to do it. How did your family go about selling some of your property? Give us some ideas. And I said, well, the first thing you need to do is hire a really good real estate attorney to advise you, because I'm not qualified to advise you. And the second thing is to find you a really good national recognized real estate brokerage firm to help expand the reach of what we can do with property. And that was my advice to them. I never thought that I'd be looking at it myself. Well, I'd done some real estate development in other ways on a much smaller scale, but I got back to my office and I was working with Jody Lightoff, who's you'll meet in a minute. He's a land planner, and I was explaining about this beautiful piece of property. I said, the sisters have this property and on and on and on. And Jody immediately looked at me and said, Edward, we need to figure out how to buy this property. We need to develop it. It is the nicest piece of property. And Jody's background is he's worked nationally in large scale developments all over the country. And he said, this is one of the nicest pieces of property. Anyway, so I decided, if this property is going to be sold, I'd rather have someone from Pittsburgh. I'd like to be a local and be able to control what's going to happen here. I don't want to see a national developer come in here, sell off all of these lots and be gone. It really has no commitment and understanding of what Pittsburgh is about and the people. And I decided I want to come and make an offer to buy the property. And I wanted to create a development that would be something I would be proud to be a part of Pittsburgh and say that I helped develop. But also I wanted to integrate it into the character of Pittsburgh and not have it as a separate freestanding community, but have it as part of the fabric or just the extension of Pittsburgh going west. And that was kind of the vision that I had. They had a bid process. I made them an offer and they didn't accept my offer. They went on and bid it out to national developers. And when the end came, finally, they said, Edward, this is what it's going to take. It's not as much as we can get from other people, but our family would rather have someone locally develop it. And so I've been blessed. And I went and found a partner of mine, my business partner, Carter Keller, and his father, Buddy Keller from Sanford. And we made a final offer and bought the property. There are no other investors with us. We don't have an outside board of directors and investors that we have to turn to. We have the final say. And we bought this property knowing that it wasn't properly zoned, but we felt that what our plan is, it's the land use plan. It's what Pittsburgh needs, and that we wanted to be a part of making it an integral part of Pittsburgh. My goal was to have housing opportunities. I went to Northwood High School. I have friends of mine that work at the university that complain about how difficult it is to buy housing in Pittsburgh. I know what it's like. I have people that are companies where the school teachers or people that work in downtown Pittsburgh can live with the executives or the senior managers of the companies that they work for. Just a lot of diversity of housing. I wanted a place that had connectivity with trails. When I grew up in Pittsburgh at the old Ram Road, I rode my bike into town every day. So I know what it's like to have bike trails. I had to ride at the old Ram Road with cars passing me 60 miles an hour. But I wanted to create a view shed along 64 where we preserve a corridor for bicycles and pedestrians. I wanted to connect to Jordan Lake through the trail system. And I want to look at it a lot differently than just an out-of-town developer would, because I have a personal interest and I have friends that live here. But I don't want to be embarrassed by having something that they come back and say, hey, well, you really messed up this town. I think, anyway, as I said, I am local. I have done some development. I built a chain of convenience stores, developed that property. Family was involved in the development of Powell Place. Started in the year 2000. We bought back out our partner a few years ago. We built the sanctuary apartments with the Keller family. It was somewhat controversial when we were going before the planning board to get site plan approval. If there's one thing will say about it, we had a lot of opposition from the neighborhoods. As soon as we built it, I had an outreach. A lot of people from that neighborhood came back and said, Edward, you did everything you said we'd do. We'd support you in anything else because of what you've done, living up to your word. I'd like to be a part of what happens in Pittsburgh. My goal is to be part of the team that makes Pittsburgh the coolest town in America. Anyway, I hope you will listen to this presentation. I'm gonna turn it over first to Patrick Bradshaw. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know.
It's just a PDF. You sent me the PDF, so we scroll. Oh, sorry.
Scrolling up in there. I'm sorry. So.
You can scroll now.
Okay. All right. Mr. Chairman and members of the planning board, I'm Patrick Bradshaw. I practice law at 128 Hillsborough. I'm very pleased to be a part of the team that's presenting this rezoning proposal for Reeves Farm, Pittsburgh to you this evening. Property is roughly 500 acres in the western part of Pittsburgh, mostly south of US 64, very near where we are right now. It is currently zoned RA residential agricultural and RA2 residential agricultural 2 acres. Property is designated on the town's land use plan for traditional neighborhood infill, mixed use activity center, and a part of it is marked for natural resource conservation target. We believe the rezoning proposal that you will hear this evening is consistent with the land use plan, and Jody Lightoff will present that in more specifically, and we've addressed it in considerable detail in the application that's been presented to you. In order to allow the creation of the exciting community that we're going to introduce to you tonight, we are requesting a legislative rezoning to a neighborhood mixed-use center conditional zoning district. The UDO says that the purpose of the MUC district is to provide areas for well-connected development that supports places to live, work, and recreate. It should be walkable and bikeable and include a mix of retail and office uses, retail, eating, entertainment, and a mix of residential uses. That is exactly the kind of community that we're got a vision for tonight. And I look forward to working with the town, with your planning staff on any legal matters related to this UDO. This time I'll yield the floor to Jody Lightoff, who's going to present it to you in good detail.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jody Lightoff. Work with Edward Holmes on this development and other pieces of property. I live at 481 in Mountain Trace in Chapel Hill, Briar Chapel. We're really excited about this piece of property. I mean, you look across the street and it's a farm that we've all envisioned, driven by morning, evening, seeing the cows playing in the pond. And, you know, it's part of what I would say the language of Pittsburgh. And I want to kind of take you through kind of the background of the planning, the ideals, and how we arrived at the plan, because I think the kind of formation of the plan is really something very special, and we're really excited to present it to the town tonight. First, you know, we really scoured the country to find the right land use planner. Edward asked me to find the best that I could find, and it was a woman that I've worked with for 25 years on urbanist communities all around the country. Beth, and then Eric Davis from 678, who actually designed the Mary Hayes Barber Holmes Park in the town of Pittsburgh. And then Chris Easter, our civil engineer firm. And Chris and I have worked together for 15, 20 years, and there's nobody better at fitting homes and buildings on the landscape. He understands grading better than anybody I've ever met. The main point I want to get out, and Edward alluded to this, was this collaboration with Reeves sister and the Reeves family, this idea of stewardship. You know, they nurtured this dairy farm for years. And they understand that the process, and that the development pressures and economic growth would bring new jobs and the need for more housing. And I've got another slide to kind of back that up as we go forward. But we actually did a 2.5, 3-day charrette and invited the Reeve sisters in to be part of the planning. And actually the upper right-hand image is the notes I took while they gave the oral history. And it was fascinating, you know, there were little special spots on property and listening to, you know, stories of their dad and also their mom, Jean Reeves, who's actually her oral history and her letters of when they met are online at UNC Greensboro, so you can track all her. So it's been just a fascinating piece of land to be a part of in this kind of collaboration. Edward and Carter and the design team, we said we wanted to find the best examples, which trips down to Georgia towards Serenbe, which you see in a lot of the Chatham County planning documents and some of the kind of Pittsburgh documents, and also a new development called Quillet that had a big economic driver movie studio across the street. Really looked at kind of how they were handling the size of homes, integration of different products, mixing of products, all those things that provide good community fabric. And then this region is rich in Meadowmont, Village of Briar Chapel. I mean, you can drive streets in all three of those, pick out your favorites and understand why and how those communities work and how the commercial. And then so that's really kind of formed that basis. And then just meeting with the county, we met with the manager, the assistant county manager, we met with Larry Lee here at the Ag Center. That's where we learned about the master plan for the Agriculture and Conference Center, the idea of a 5,000 square foot amphitheater behind it, the need for hotels, the need to make Ag Center the #1 Class A equestrian facility in the state of North Carolina. And so some of our response in our planning and our land uses are responding to both the Ag Center and Central Carolina.
Thank you.
And again, you know, just looking at the kind of richness of the west side is very unique. We already have very authentic community places on the west side. And then looking at the county's growth out to Renaissance Drive and moving workers out and being able to provide some services for that, because it's a little bit more of a distance. We've got sheriff's office, we're walking distance, or middle school. Our site is literally 1 mile from town center, right? So it's got that walkability and connection. We want to embrace that and bring kind of all of these pieces that sit around us into our community. Again, just a little bit of the landscape. The top right photo was interesting. I found this in Edward's office, actually. So he's had this photo in his office for quite some time. But, you know, it's just going through, you know, forested area, dairy farm. We've got the connections. The north side's kind of interesting. It has the old 64 right away that bent across the creek. So that kind of forms the north edge. And then we have the Reeve, which is right down here, that I went back through all the county GIS aerial maps, and it looks like it was built prior to 1975. So Reeves Road has been there for quite some time. Just the basic environmental infrastructure. Robertson Creek is the #1 kind of environmental framework we have. We've got Hill Creek on the right. And I should say that after we, Edward and Carter purchased the Reeves farm, young couple, Alexander Borello, they had a tree fall through their house and didn't know what to do. And so they owned the top 2 parcels on the northeast of the site. And so they came to us. And so we were able to kind of bring the full farm back together by the purchase of those lands. So now we are extend all the way down to Hill Creek on the right edge and then tributaries of Robertson Creek. So Robertson Creek is, you know, what we're all about in protecting and thinking through the drainage and viewshed and how we treat development along Robertson Creek. I will note that there's the old farm road crossing was right here on this property. You'll see that come back. Again, just kind of the planning constructs that we've talked together as a team. On the right, it's something I found in 1970. Thomas Reeves was the first planning director for Chatham County and wrote this kind of beautiful statement. And sorry, the Zoom call's in here, so minimize that real quick. The desirability of living in Chatham will be affected by the preservation of attractive natural features and the quality of the community facilities. Availability of jobs will influence the population growth, which is a principal determinant of need for residential development. And, you know, 53 years later, Wolfspeed, Fast, others, Coca-Cola have really put, you know, the need for residential housing done in a wonderful community on our ballot. And so, you know, three guiding forces in all of our work was the land use plan update, the unified development order, and the one Pittsboro Parks and Recreation Plan, which you can find a picture of me in the back because I participated in that. And then we reached out to the community. We really focused on the preservation of natural features. You'll see how we've treated Robertson Creek through this, local regional connections, but primarily through all of this, we want to address housing for all life stages because that's critical. And that's what we heard in the community meetings. We want to really focus on that missing middle and then the greenway and trails connections. I think those are kind of the dominant features of this. And then really making sure that this is a walkable, bikeable community. It's got a definition of a strong public realm. Building the building, what is your experience day to day as you experience this community? And then streets as amenities, because that's how we kind of live on the streets. And so kind of key planning constructs going through here. Again, this is a look at reiteration of what's in your report of how we kind of embrace the themes throughout the land use plan. So I'm not going to read through all these, but on the right hand, top right, I will note that Greenway Trail from the one Pittsboro plan comes down to the Richardson's property, crosses 64 and follows the alignment of Robertson Creek. And I just want to call your attention to that as we address the future facilities for the town. And then the land use plan, you can see that, you know, basically we have 3-4 colors, and that's going to come back in just one more. And then the unified development ordinance, you know, really this kind of key things that Patrick alluded to earlier: walkable, bikeable, vertical mixing, well integrated, all those kind of ideals of community and what makes great communities. And then we laid in a basic framework of roads and connections, and the number of connections on 64 is intriguing. You know, we're asking for 4, and coupled with the Ag Center, that will be 5 intersections along 64. We are doing a TIA. We did send out the MOU to NCDOT. They had a few comments on that. Morgan Lett, I think she had some influence, her and Kent, on that as well. And so we're wrapping up the MOU to complete the traffic impact analysis. But again, you can see this diagram really, I want to point out that we're only crossing Robertson Creek once, and then we're crossing the tributary again at the old farm road. So our kind of wetland impact has been minimized through this whole development. And as we look across the street, you can see a kind of nice roll in the topography. And that's really played a factor in how we've addressed the units and what your view shed along 64 is going to feel like. So we got down, and hopefully you appreciate this. We took the land use plan colors and we just like purple better, so we changed them all. But really, this talks about the idea of the gradation of density. So we came up with this kind of thematic idea of how to code this product of land uses, but the dark purple having the most types of land uses, to the lightest purple having the most restricted land use, and then 2 colors of greens, the environmental framework, and then parks and open space. So within this plan, you'll see the preservation of the 2 ponds, the location of keying in on one entrance and making that center mixed use hub that was identified in the land use plan, and then building out upon that and letting the density stretch out a little bit. And then through all this kind of frontage along 64, allowing for that mix of uses and activities, whether they support the Ag Center or Central Carolina Community College or what have you. We've got places for buildings that will accommodate. And then we coded all of that and said, okay, in these particular colors, we can, by each kind of primary land use, retail services, office, hospitality, lodging, multifamily, single family. We said, okay, within each of these colors, you're allowed up to this amount of square footage based upon this use. So while there's an overall larger number of commercial uses, we've capped the types of uses that could occur. And so again, with a 2 years before the sewer comes, and then, 7, 8, 10 years, we don't know this project, the market's gonna shift a lot on us. I mean, could be a lightning strike. Central Carolina Community College could come to us and say, hey, we'd like to do another building just across the street. We've got a plan and we've accounted for this within these character areas. So that's really set up that framework of how we're looking at the usage integrated within the project. And then the next thing is, again, this is the beginning of the illustrative plan. Right? This is the vision plan that we've adopted. The 5 circles are 5 minutes walk, or what it takes to walk across it. So it's about a 20-minute walk across this property. But each of these areas can have their own unique character and types of homes or diversity of home styles, what have you. So the idea of, these kind of hamlets, because we're at that neighborhood scale, we're not building NCDO 2. 6% of Chatham Park size, right? We're small. We're at that very neighborhood scale where we can get in here and really define and work with a road system and topography. Early moves. The next slide really talks about that greenway. So our thought, when we met with the Reef Sisters and we were and we actually held a shred here in the Ag Center, being able to look across the road the whole time we were doing the shred is the importance of the pond doing that view shed along 64. And so Chris actually mapped out all the topography changes, all the view sheds, the openings, and what came out of the shred was, this is the one thing, this is the cool factor. Let's preserve that view shed of the pond and the greenway, and let's make a nice park system that where if somebody's visiting the Ag Center or people want to, they love the walking trail around Central Carolina Community College, could we extend that fabric and make the walks longer? And by preserving this and actually get some good park space, in this quadrant of the town. And worked with Katie and town staff again and looked at their requests of amphitheaters or covered shelters and how we might be able to provide for some of the park systems and the park needs here at Reeves property. And then we've got trails that can follow the creek and out of the community. So really creating a wonderful walkable, bikeable fabric. And, with the greenway connecting kind of Austin Chapel Church Road, that takes you to Town Lake Park, it takes you back into town, it takes you into Chatham Park, and their wonderful multi-use trail system that can take you to the Hall River. So I think it's quite a unique thing for the town. And then here's, I just wanted to kind of provide the clean version of the illustrative master plans, focusing on view sheds. And again, this building right here that we've shown, in our minds, it would make sense to be a hotel to support the Ag Center. And we do have a unique little piece over here. We've shown a second hotel there as well, because the master plan for the Ag Center showed 2 hotels. We're more than happy to work with the county to blur that property line and make that happen to support the Ag Center. We do have, a nice commercial node, not quite mosaic scale, but at the same kind of pedestrian integrated mixed use retail node. Apartment complex here that will have retail first floor. Again, this is all coded. If we wanted to do a 35,000 square foot brewery, somebody wanted to do a destination brewery. If Central Carolina Community College wanted a building on the lake, we could do a building here, and all of a sudden you've got this kind of wonderful interconnected uses that people could explore, walking and biking. And I think finally, I know it's a long presentation at the end of the night, but this is an aerial view of how that would frame up around the lake and the open space and the park system and the trail system. And then this is a view of the multifamily. Again, this building could be the commercial. It could, we'd be more than happy to have a tattoo parlor in this building. But those, and I'm not joking. It is part of what's going to make this activity center work is the diversity of uses and retail and the building, whether these are homes or whether these are storefronts or law offices. But getting that mix and that retail mix on the first floor and having the ability to kind of come out and walk. And finally, just a picture of the streetscapes. And again, streets as amenities, I'll say it 1,000 times. The streets are important, the design of streets, and Morgan and I've had a lot of great talks on how do you execute, build beautiful, wonderful streets that make neighborhoods. And with that, presentation's ended. Glad to take.
Jenny.
Someone signed up to speak for public comment on that.
Oh, all right.
Amy Johnson. Johnson, sorry, if you could confirm your address for the board.
Yes, full name and address, please.
Amy Johnson, 126 Reeves Road, which is on the west side of this property. So the gentlemen are right, this is an awesome piece of land that's been there for a long time. And to me, does typify what Pittsburgh's about, and that's why I moved there. So there's a couple of comments I had. Scroll through your purple map.
Yeah, I'll do it for you.
2 comments, sorry, I won't keep it too long. Right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, do you have a few minutes?
Just use it.
I can do it, thanks. So right here,
Mhm.
this is Reeves Road. Okay, this is where I live. And I have other neighbors. He talked about the importance of streets. That street only has probably 6, you could see 6 or 7 or 8 homes. It's very quiet, it's very narrow. We walk our dogs on it, we walk our kids on it. So it's a nice, quiet street. They want to tap it, they want to use Roberson Creek Road, to Reeves Road to come into this development rather than using 64. So that's a big concern for me and a lot of my neighbors, although that's hearsay, but I've heard feedback from them as well. So that's something that's a concern for us. The second thing, and this has more to do with my profession. I am a professor of soil chemistry or environmental soil science at NC State. And the area that's currently in forest, I'm shocked that you guys haven't done more of an environmental assessment of that area. Anybody who lives around here knows that Roberson Creek floods a lot. And you can see that as you cross 64, as you're going down 64 business, you can see as you cross it. A lot of that soil, well, along Roberson Creek, that's hydric soils, that's wetland. And so, Carl, as you know, when you take some of that natural land out of the, pave it or whatever, runoff increases. So that seems to be a pretty big concern, at least from my point of view. So, yeah, those are my only comments.
Thank you very much. Any questions from board members for the applicants?
Yeah, I have one that's in my mind. So the different schematics you're showing here. So we have this one.
Yes.
Then you showed several that were on an aerial photo overlay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't see a good correlation between those 2 schematics. For example, this one here, if it's meant to be verbatim, and I'm sure at this stage it's not, shows much more open area, tree stands, stream buffers, et cetera,
Right.
than the purple one does. So is there a way that you can better represent what you're looking at there long-term?
Yeah, so the character areas map and what we submitted for approval is an interesting document, right? And so when we go back to the character areas, and so this is something that we need, all of us have discussed is, we want to, if we just take 64 right now and say, this is important to us, we're going to protect this view shed. We're going to define that development where that could occur. Janie, Randy, myself, Edward, Patrick, we have to come to a conclusion of how we code that so that if is that 120 feet or is it 124 feet? And where is that curve? So what we've tried to do is give the basic development areas in this map.
Mhm.
And then understand that once you tune that map, you put in actual block structures with alleys, and you look at how we could achieve the density that we are requesting. This map shows you how that density could occur with a good block structure, and that we could pull away from Robertson Creek and see more about the natural areas that we've been protecting, that we just mentioned. And I will say, we had waters and wetlands go out and do the environmental mapping. They're actually out there this week doing the endangered species mapping for us, plant species, right? So all this has been mapped by our wetland consultant. And then we met with Morgan to make sure that all the streams and everything that we mapped today is in accordance with the town policies. So, this is an illustrative, and it's also all yellow, so you can't really see the disparity. We're not saying, a red building goes here, a blue building goes here. We're trying to set the framework of the roads. Where are the frontages that are important to us? Where's the view sheds? And then what is a logical block sequence in the plan?
Is this to scale here
Yes.
theoretically?
Yes. Oh, yeah. This has been in AutoCAD, and we haven't begun engineering this yet. So we haven't done profiles of the roads. But from a linear foot takeoff, a mix of, we've gone through, every type of housing mix we could, cottages, tiny homes, all the missing quadplexes, triplexes, the whole ideal of missing middle. We've layered through this plan to verify the density works.
Thank you. On an earlier slide, it appeared to me that you were gonna run a road. It was early on in the presentation, gonna run a road. And it's not this one, and maybe I was not reading it correctly, but it looked like it was quite parallel to 64, south of 64.
Yes.
And it would poke out right in that cul-de-sac. Isn't it anywhere else but early on in some of the historical things you were showing?
This was the original framework road that I presented. And so we have a parcel right here that we own. And then we do not own this parcel. And so sticking a little stub street in to get some residential development there. Again, is it tiny homes or is it?
Yeah, this one was, this one would have, we've been coming across this creek right about here. Has there ever been a road designed for this?
No, it's so steep in there. I mean, the existing home, if you go up there, existing home, and it's actually.
That was your bike trail.
Yeah, that was the bike trail.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Just.
Okay.
Yeah. No, there you go. So there's your greenway trail that would come down and follow Hill Creek and be able to tie into
Okay.
Central Carolina Community College Trail Network. You can see the old 64 running through there. It's kind of fascinating. The old bridge back in the woods there.
All right, thank you.
Board members, other questions? Ray?
CCHA's done some historical investigations in that area, and we don't believe that there's a cemetery in that area, so that you're pretty good. Chatham Park works with us and has an agency that goes in and checks for historical elements, and that land is very historical. Which I believe the gentleman behind you's been on it.
There is a cemetery on the south side of Robertson Creek. It's the Hill Family Cemetery. It's not maintained right now. But we have spoken with the property owners, and I'm trying to remember, but there's a group of local societies written very photographs of the property on the south side, and they've walked through our property, not inside anything specific. It's of historical significance. We know on the west side, kind of or on the hilltop there on the west hand side, in the middle of that cluster of homes, is an old home site, but we've not found any structures or anything. There's some landscaping that indicates based on the tree structure where there used to be housing. Nothing that we found, but I'm very interested. If we find something, we want to preserve it. I mean,
But that's what we're basically asking. There's a gentleman by the name of Cy Robbins. I don't know if you've heard of him. He did a lot of work for the person that actually goes in and checks out Chatham Park for their historical. And Chatham Park's been excellent on that area. I want to make sure I compliment them on that.
Well, I would,
From here, I mean, I totally respect that would be.
So you'd be willing to work with us on anything to do historically, possibly naming roads and different things that tie into that area? I would appreciate it.
and I would just point out, again, the old homestead and, this is conceptual at best, is this green, can we manipulate this green, which, again, in each of those hamlets, the idea of a center, whether it's park or retail node or some type of civitas in each of those that brings the community together, business 5 minutes. That green can be altered, we can change the road plan to accommodate if we did find something.
We just want to make sure it's
Yeah.
history documented if you find something,
And I think there's a little stone wall too, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, there's several old stone walls along the creek. There's a stone wall and it's been washed and eroded out of there. Part of it, there's lots of beautiful old stone walls. We will not be approaching those areas. They're all in environmentally sensitive areas back to address the concerns about the wetlands and flood. I think out of 500 acres, how many acres will be developed, Jody? 350, so we'll have over 150 acres. But of those 150, lots of them are because they are floodplains. I mean, we will not be encroaching in those areas and disturbing those soils. And my goal is to preserve as many trees as we possibly.
I appreciate your lead-in speech. That was appreciated. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I've got a handful of things, not for.
Go ahead, Carl.
For the applicants. So this is another big one that paralleled the North Village last month, which all these comments are leading towards the fact I'm going to move to table. There's some, they have changed the use table, or they have some proposed uses, the conditional, that I would like to digest more and talk to staff about. Urgent care facilities, hotels, motels, permitted mini storage, et cetera, brewery. And then they got special use permits for distillery and winery. All which may be okay. But not to me, that would be compatible with the neighborhood that's due west of here. So there's a handful of lots. If one of these schematics shows the lots that Dr. Johnson referred to, just due west of this property. So I think we need to look at that a little bit better. I want to talk more, and maybe not tonight, but I want to talk about how there might be impacts to the OI parcel, which is the Ag Center, this parcel, with some of their uses. If they were to be in those 2 or 3 pieces that used to be south of Old 64, but now are north of New 64. Does that make sense? Remember from the maps, it's not across the road. It's these 2 right here.
Mhm.
Across the road from us now.
Yeah.
They've requested some waivers and conditions, which I have not personally fully digested. One example, outdoor entertainment facility. We don't know where that might be. And if it's at a portion that's next to the neighborhood over there, that could be an imposition on them. And, a lot of this seems very reasonable, very parallel to a lot of things we do. But for those reasons I just mentioned, I moved to table so we can better understand it and look through, especially that table of uses where they have some S's and some P's that now would be not permitted uses.
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved by Carl, seconded by Frida.
Such a date that you can take.
Yeah, you went 23rd? Yeah, okay. The all in favor say aye, all opposed nay.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So unanimously, we table this until the August meeting of the Pittsboro Planning Board. Next on the agenda, Planning Department updates. Director Cahoon Tingle?
Nothing to contribute.
Nothing to contribute. Thank you, sir. Any commentary from the board before we adjourn?
No, I don't.
All quiet, move to adjourn.
Make a motion with adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.